What is up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Lovely Loaners. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at this Chris Reeve Sebenza, which is on loan to us from AdvancedKnifeBro. Now, most of you probably already know who AKB is, but if you do not, you should definitely go check out his channel. And I really strongly encourage you to do that. He has a great sense of humor, he covers a ton of knives, and he's just a really good channel overall and a really good dude. I actually lent him a couple of my knives, including the Chris Reeve Umnumzan, and so you should definitely go check out his videos over there. And having said all that, as I mentioned in the Umnumzan video, I'm not a particularly valid person to be covering something like a Sebenza. I don't really use knives in the way that a Sebenza is intended to be used, and so if you're looking for like a genuine review where you can really get an idea of is it worth the money and how well does it hold up to real use and everything like that, then definitely go check out the video on AdvancedKnifeBro's channel, which I'll also link to at the end of this video, because ultimately, all I'm really able to do with this knife, especially with the injury on my hand right now, is just tell you guys a few things about, what I like about it and what I don't. And also, speaking about AdvancedKnifeBro, he was batoning this knife and has caused a little bit of damage to, I believe it's the lock bar where it makes contact with the tang is a little bit kind of curled over, and so I really can't give the knife a super fair shake in terms of like deployment is not. I feel like with a normal Sebenza and like with my Umnumzan, if you really want to, you can kind of like snap it out with your thumb, and this one really requires like a good strong wrist flick, because the detent doesn't appear to be fully inserting itself into the hole cut out for the detent, because the curling over of the lock bar is actually also making contact with the tang of the knife, which is holding the detent ball a little further out from full contact. So you don't get quite as snappy of a deployment anymore on this particular example of the model. So I really can't speak to how easy it is to flick out the Sebenza versus the Umnumzan, because this one is a little bit defected in those ways. Having said all that, moving on, I do want to say that the clip functions just as well as it does on my Umnumzan. I really like this little pressed titanium clip. It's not particularly fancy, and of course if you are looking for an upgrade, you can always reach out to Millet Knives, who makes cool little pointy clips for 3D milled clips for Chris Reeve knives, which is super cool. But it functions super well. It's going to go in and out of the pocket very smoothly. You can see it's got just the right amount of tension, a really good ramp. It's very smooth all around, and so ultimately that functions very well. All of these Chris Reeve knives come with these little lanyards. I've left the one on my Umnumzan, and I've enjoyed the one that's on this Chris Reeve knife, just because there isn't a whole lot of grabbiness to the knife, and so it is nice to just be able to pull it out with a lanyard. I will say with the Chris Reeve that the blade edge comes right. Actually, there's that flashlight that I bought for this express purpose. You can see it really comes like right up to the edge there. I don't know how well of a job I'm doing showing you this. But I can definitely like make contact with my nail, and so like I'm picking the edge right now and I'm not really in there, so you could definitely run your finger down the back of this knife and do some serious damage to the tip of your finger, so definitely be careful with that. It's a pretty big pet peeve for me to have edges that are so close to the exposed areas of a knife. I've injured myself before just reaching in my pocket, and that really pisses me off. So I would say that just because you pack a whole bunch of blade into a frame doesn't necessarily mean you've done the best work in terms of design. Anyway, moving on, the Chris Reeve Sebenza is a really classic design, and there's good reason for that, right? The ergonomics are pretty universal. You do have a very light curve in this direction, a very light curve in this direction, and that means that when you're gripping the knife, either way, the most pronounced sections of the knife are at either end, meaning that any movement, in or out, if you're gripping the knife tightly, is not going to happen, because of course the larger area would have to slip through your hand, and it just really, I'm really yanking on this, and nothing's going to happen there. So if you are worried about something like slipping up on the knife or something like that, this is a pretty good extension down here, and you really shouldn't have to worry about that. So the ergonomics really are top notch. I mean, that's what you get with a design that's 20 years old, I would assume, maybe more, 25 years old. It's a really, really solid, simple design. I do like the jimping. It's, smooth enough that you can rub it and it doesn't hurt, but it is grippy enough that if you are in it and bearing down on it, you don't really get too much slippage. Something that I mentioned in my Norseman video is that I do like these kind of, these shaped blade spines where they're a little curved instead of just being completely flat. That should be the case. The Rask has a flat blade spine, but you can see the curvature around the flipper tab, choil kind of area here, which it's like that on the blade spine for the Norseman, and it's like that on the blade spine for the Sebenza, and I really like that. It's a comfortable feel. I think it looks good. I think it looks classy, and it's something that I'm definitely a fan of. In terms of how well the blade functions, I'm not even gonna... Do I really need to bother? I mean, look at it. You could define the term blade shape with this blade shape, if that makes any sense. You've got a nice flat cutting edge here, a nice pretty mellow belly, not too much curvature to give you any trouble. You've got a nice piercing point here that does taper so that you have so that it's not super fat right behind the point. You are looking at, of course, a nice long tall hollow grind, and yeah, I mean, the blade functions incredibly well. Lately, with my injured hand, because I can't really flip knives with my right hand very well, this has actually been the knife that I've been reaching for most when it comes to opening packages. And I've gotten a lot of packages lately, so this knife has definitely seen a couple pieces of cardboard. And I've really enjoyed it from that perspective. I've broken down boxes with it and everything, and it's just a workhorse. It really is. In terms of like whether or not it's worth the cost or anything like that, that's for you to decide for yourself. I do like the carbon fiber version. It's pretty light. I am realizing as I say that I never did any of the specs at the beginning of the video, so let's go ahead and jump into that real quick. Let's check out the weight. I don't actually know how much this weighs with the carbon fiber on it. Mind you, it does have a lanyard and a bead. 3.67 ounces. So, bam. I mean, that's really at the bottom of the range of the 3.5 to 4.5 we've talked about before for kind of good EDC weight. And yeah, that carbon fiber really brings the weight down on this. When I was holding this compared to my Umnumzan, while of course the Umnumzan is a larger knife, it was still pretty impressive, what this carbon fiber is able to do to the weight of the knife. And then for those of you who haven't handled a Sebenza, let's get a quick size comparison going with some cheaper knives. Got a Rat 2, nice and small, PM2, nice and large. You can see here that the Sebenza lines up pretty well with the PM2, a little bit longer, but ultimately a lot of similar dimensions. I would argue that the ergonomics are a little bit more comfortable on the PM2 just because of all the contouring, but that, the Reeve ergonomics are going to serve you completely well. And then I would go so far as to argue as the Sebenza actually having the better overall blade shape. That's obviously going to be personal preference, and it really depends on what you use your knives for, but the way I use knives, my feeling is, it should be pretty good at like cutting fruit, and like foods and stuff, and I just think that the Sebenza really lends itself better to that with the slightly longer cutting edge and the slightly, the area that actually has a flat cutting edge here, as opposed to the full belly of the PM2. The PM2 is great, and it'll cut a lot of stuff, but it really gets super thin behind the tip here, and you are looking at a tall flat grind. I don't know, just the The shape is great for cutting, but the overall blade shape doesn't lend itself quite as well, I think, to cutting through things or slicing through things. This big hole here as well, perhaps just as likely to get caught up on anything as the thumb stud here. But if we actually take some quick measurements, if you look at the useful blade beyond the thumb stud, we're looking at just above 3.25 inches. And then if you come to, we won't even come all the way to the front of the circle. We'll go a little bit back just to be completely fair. Then we're looking at more like 2.75 actual inches of useful cutting edge. And so, anytime you're cutting through something gunky or something like that, you're typically going to prefer the Reeve blade shape as far as I'm concerned. So that's definitely something to consider. We'll go ahead and get these out of the way. And I didn't have like a whole bunch of notes down for these guys. The videos I'm doing right now are a little bit more off the cuff because I do have the injured hand, and I'm just really struggling to come to grips with being able to review a knife without fully kind of embracing it and enjoying it. The Sebenza here I do feel a little bit more comfortable with because I did have this knife prior to my injury, so I got to play with it a lot, and I got to flick it out a lot and everything like that. Lockup is going to be amazing and awesome. I did end up watching the Cold Steel video last night where they compared the Sebenza 21 to the Cold Steel 4 thing or whatever. I don't fucking know. I don't care about their knives. And it's just so funny, their reactions and stuff when the lock doesn't hold up to like 45 pounds of weight or whatever. And it's, who cares, man? Like, sure, I guess if that's what you're doing with your knives, then that's something to consider. But at the end of the day, this is a really nice, classy gentleman folder, and a lot of people like it. And it's got great ergonomics. It's got a great freaking cutting edge, great freaking blade shape. It's the right weight. It's a classic. There's no way around it. So that's pretty much all I have to say about this one, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment down below. Definitely go check out AdvancedKnifeBro and his channel. I love that dude. He's super funny, and I love watching his videos. Of course, if you'd like to see beautiful pictures of all these awesome knives around here, you can do so by following me on Instagram at tovarishworks. And of course, if you want to send me a lovely loaner or simply just chat me up, you can do so by emailing me at tovarishworks@gmail.com. So thanks so much, guys, and I will see you next time.